Okay, so you've found mold in your home. It's that moment, right? Your mind starts racing, you jump online, and suddenly you're getting all this confusing, really extreme advice. Well, we're going to cut right through all that noise. We're going to give you a simple, clear framework to understand what you're actually looking at.
So let's be honest. You see it, maybe it's a dark patch on the wall or just some speckles on a window frame. What's that immediate gut feeling? Is it, I'll just wipe that and forget about it? Or is it a full-blown DEFCON 1 emergency? Most of us, our brains immediately jump to one of two places. It's either total panic, thinking, oh my gosh, it's toxic, we have to move out, or complete dismissal, just, it's nothing, I'll just wipe it away. The thing is, both of these reactions kind of miss the bigger picture.
Yeah, the truth is, the right response is almost always somewhere in that murky middle ground. It's not really about if mold is there, it's about understanding what its presence actually means for your specific situation. And that brings us to the core idea for this whole explainer. We need to stop thinking of mold as this simple, safe, or dangerous switch. Instead, we've got to start thinking about it on a spectrum. So, what do I mean by this spectrum of risk? Well, it's a way of looking at mold not as the enemy itself, but more like a messenger. And the message it's sending, well, that all depends on where it is, how long it's been there, and most importantly, if it keeps coming back. See, at the low risk end of this spectrum, mold is just an indicator. Think of it like a little check engine light for your house. It's just telling you, hey, there's a small moisture issue right here. Like a cold spot on a wall or some condensation on a window. It's a signal to just adjust something. But then you go all the way to the other end, the high-risk end. Now, mold means something way more serious. It's not just a little signal anymore. It's a symptom of a persistent, ongoing environmental failure. This is when the moisture problem isn't just temporary, it's chronic, and it's allowing mold to really take hold. Okay, so how in the world do you figure out where your situation falls on the spectrum? Well, the good news is you don't need a lab coat or anything fancy. You just need to put on your detective hat right in your own home and look for a few key clues. So let's break them down. Right. Let's start with what low-level mold usually looks like. We're talking about small, contained patches. You often see it on places that get condensation, like window frames. But the really crucial signs are that it isn't spreading, and once you fix the moisture source, say you start opening a window more often, it doesn't come rushing back. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because that's a huge contrast to the higher risk stuff. The biggest red flag of all is regrowth. If you clean it and it comes right back, that's your sign of a deeper issue. Other warnings, it's spreading across walls, you find it in hidden places like cupboards, or you have that constant musty smell even when you can't see a thing. And this really highlights a critical point. Context is everything. The risk isn't just about the mold itself, it's about your exposure to it. A small patch in a spare room you never go into, that's a totally different ballgame from that exact same patch being right next to your bed, where you're breathing that air for 8 hours a night. So this leads us to a really, really important question. We've been talking about the mold we can see, but what about the stuff we can't? Honestly, hidden mold is often a much bigger deal. And why is that? Because it loves to grow in these dark, stagnant areas that never really dry out, like behind a big piece of furniture that's pushed up against a cold outside wall. When you find it there, it's a huge signal that you've got a long-term moisture problem, not just a little bit of temporary condensation. So here's a super simple test you can do yourself. Step 1, clean the mold. Step 2, make a change to deal with the moisture. Maybe that means better ventilation, maybe you move some furniture away from the wall. And then step 3, the most important part, you watch it, you monitor it. If it doesn't come back, your problem was probably low level and situational. But if it does, well, now you know you're dealing with something more stubborn. Okay, so you've done your detective work, you've assessed the risk. Now what? What do you do with that information? Well, it all comes down to knowing when to manage the situation yourself and when you need to escalate it. And it's actually a pretty simple line to draw. For that low-level situational mold we talked about, the right response is management. Simple tweaks to ventilation, heating, that's often all it takes. But for the higher risk, persistent stuff, the kind that keeps returning, your response has to be escalation. And that means digging deeper, investigating the source, and maybe, just maybe, calling in a professional. So why is making this distinction so incredibly important? Because the whole goal here is to have a response that actually fits the problem. It's all about finding that effective middle ground between doing absolutely nothing and completely overreacting.
When we use this spectrum mindset, we dodge two huge pitfalls. First, we prevent all the unnecessary stress and money that comes from panicking over a minor issue. But at the same time, we make sure that the genuine, persistent problems, the ones that can actually affect your health and your home, get the serious attention they absolutely deserve.
If you only take one single thing away from this whole explainer, please let it be this. The true level of risk from mold is determined by the specific context, the location, how persistent it is, your exposure to it. It is not determined by a general fear of the word mold. So the critical question you need to ask yourself now is this. Is the mold you're seeing a simple indicator, just pointing to a small adjustment you need to make? Or is it a hazard, signaling a much deeper problem that needs to be solved? The good news is, now you have the tools to figure it out.